Now, what this show is about, can we use ChatGPT as an aid to become a successful trader? Or successful at anything. Of course, let me just give you my own personal story. When I was growing up, early in my career, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I dropped out of college. I went directly to work in the defense industry. I had the brains to be able to convince them that they should hire me as a research scientist. Seriously, I was hired as a research scientist in a defense-related thing, and I literally worked on the inertial guidance systems, laser-based inertial guidance systems of intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's what I did for a job. My very first job. I even worked with material sciences and developed infrared transmissive materials in vapor deposition tanks, growing these crystalline structures. They were infrared transmissive, and we put them on the cones of heat-seeking missiles. I did that based on my ability to convince them, a young kid that was just 22 years old that had no idea about the world, but I did enough reading and enough research and had, I guess, a good enough brain to be able to figure stuff out and say, hey, I can do this work. And so they hired me and they allowed me to help design guidance systems for nuclear missiles. All right. So that was me. Now, but I got there because I was studious. And this is pre-internet. This was way before the internet. I didn't have access to the internet and the world's information. I had access to libraries and technical libraries and other semi-proprietary information that I would just delve through and just absorb. I could read a book on physics in a night and take the things that I needed and be able to, I guess, regurgitate it out to somebody else and make them believe that I was competent. Now, of course, once you're in the job, you have to prove your competence. And so, I did that as well. Now, I'm just accumulating and regurgitating information and then being smart enough to be able to do something with it. So if you're wondering, yes, that's how I started my career. I was a rocket scientist. That's me. Anyways, in a way, that's kind of like what Chat-GPT is. You just feed it information and it can, because of its training, because of the human intelligence input to its training of how to think, it's able to then take all this massive amounts of information from all corners of the internet and then through prompts, in response to prompts, be able to put out a semi-intelligent thing. Right? That you would think, hey, this Chat-GPT, it's almost like it's alive and knows what it's saying, but it's really not. On the other hand, I was alive. I did understand what I was saying, and I actually did things like that. So anyways, that's Chat-GPT. You put in a prompt, and it will respond with however sophisticated your prompt is. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about how you can create articles, and I've tried creating articles with them, and one of the problems when you put in information about, say, creating an outline for a blog, you have to be very specific about what you want. So for instance, if I wanted to create a blog for my website, a blog post, I could give it some background on the topical matter, give it some keywords that I wanted to introduce into there. If I really knew what I was doing, I would make sure that it would also be SEO compliant and then have the underlying structure and everything that it needed to be searched and indexed by a search engine. If I knew all that stuff, it could create a fairly competent piece. However, it would be missing like character. And it's very possible that some of the information that it regurgitated back may not be factually correct. So you have to make sure that you go in there and change that. And also that you put a little bit of, again, the quality of your prompt will determine the output. Now, but even then, it sometimes gives you what appears to be this sort of templated response. And so you need to have the smarts to be able to identify that, and also the background and the thing that you're talking about. So for instance, you can't just go and create an article on something that you know nothing about and think that it's going to produce something that is of such high quality that it's going to pass the muster of someone who is an expert looking at that. And they're going to look at this and they're going to say, it's kind of like regurgitating out of a basic book or something. It's like they went through and looked at the chapters and the lines of those chapters and then put together this thing. It doesn't really have any meat to it, no depth, no understanding, no nothing. So I'll tell you, and I've met people like that. Let me tell you a little story about somebody just like that. So I'm running this project for a very large insurance company, and my job was to build this very large team. They were incorporating or absorbing another company, and we're building out this huge technical team that needed to build the new product that was going to accommodate this new company coming in. And so we're looking for a database architect. And so we find a whole bunch of candidates. Now, I had directed everybody on the team on how to interview these people, the questions to ask, and the type of responses that they should expect, et cetera. And then they were supposed to then grade the people because I couldn't do it all myself. So it was a pretty big operation. And we had dozens of candidates that would come through and we had to grade them. So anyways, there was this one guy that comes through and he was a Stanford graduate, had specific experience in data architecture, and he seemed, really on top of things. And everybody gave him a great grade. And when I talked to him, I couldn't get him to answer me directly on anything. So for instance, I would even tell him the answer that I want, how I want it presented, and what I wanted him to tell me. And he couldn't even do that because he didn't have the ability to have that introspection on what I wanted. He could only regurgitate what he thought I needed to hear. And like I said before, it was almost as if he was looking in a manual on data architecture and just sort of regurgitating the index or the table of contents. And so, but everybody else thought he was great because he had such a great resume and experience, but he couldn't think on his feet. And he couldn't give you directly, when you asked him directly, what you wanted. So we all get together and we were grading him, and I'm saying, man, this guy is just horrible. And everyone thought, oh, Ernie, I think this guy's great. Look at his resume and blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but what did he tell you? What did you actually probe into what he really knew about the topical matter? Or did you just get the veneer? And everyone just got the veneer. And I said, okay, I can't hire this guy for our team. And they said, yeah, but we all think he's good. I said, well, let's tell you what, let's bring him back. And then these are the questions that I want you to ask him. Very, very specific questions. And I want you to tell him the answer that you want. And I guarantee you, he will not be able to tell you the answer that you want because he can't understand the answer that you want. They said, wow, that's really weird. So the guy came in, they started grilling him. We were all in this small conference room, and it was really small. It was crowded. It was almost like an interrogation. And so one by one, we started asking him these questions and then demanding that he respond in a certain way, which he couldn't. It wasn't difficult. We just say, hey, we just want you to tell us that you do this, and this, and what is the idea behind that? Couldn't do it. And he was sweating and just profusely sweating. And he had the inability to think outside the box or to give us what we wanted to hear. And so then after the interview, they were all like, wow, Ernie, you were right. This guy is just brain dead. I said, yeah, that's not the kind of guy we need to help integrate this $100 million company that you just bought. And you want to have some innovation, this isn't the guy. And so they all agreed, and we found some other more appropriate people that did fit the bill. But that's kind of the same thing here. There are some people, some systems that just cannot produce what you want them to produce. So some people, they're going to talk to Chat-GPT and not be able to get anything of quality out of it. That's just the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, that's how some people are. However, if you do have some good experience, some in-depth knowledge of something, and you can formulate prompt that would create an avatar, a sort of a body of knowledge that would somehow find the tentacles of in the recesses of its memory and training to be able to grab the things that you want and put them together in a way that made a lot of sense. It's a huge time saver because you can create things that are really useful to other people and create it rather quickly.